Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart.
Today we launch the technical pilot for the program, and our citizens need to fully understand the process involved in rolling out a system of this magnitude. We have put in place a framework to protect the data collected under the NIDS. We have embedded into law serious consequences for data breaches. Most importantly, however, the NIDS is subject to the Data Protection Act. I must also stress the importance of consent, where the individual must give permission for their identity to be verified. And that is a first in our jurisdiction. We will be rolling out the NIDS in various phases. Today is phase 1. And this is where we will have the technical pilot rollout, after which we will commence a national rollout all across Jamaica, in all parishes. In parallel, work is proceeding to establish the National Identification and Registration Authority, NIRA, which will manage the NIDS. The technical pilot is a very important phase, and today we launch a process to test drive all the processes and subsystems that we have been developing in the last 3 years. During the pilot, it is of significance that we will move to obtain the International Civil Aviation Organization's, the ICAO certification. The Jamaica National Identification Card will therefore follow the international standards for digital identity.
As of March 31, Jamaicans will receive electronic passports for travel. Here with more information on the change, we've got Andrew Winter, CEO of the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, we call them PICA, and Amy Johnson-Lynch, Senior Director of Projects and Enterprise Risk Management at PICA. Ladies, gentlemen, good morning.
Morning to you
Good
both.
morning.
Welcome
Good to see you this morning. So let me start with you, Sir Winter. This is a move towards aligning us with best practices, global trends. What is this about?
Yes. This is certainly about bringing our passport system in line with what is happening in the world today. Approximately 160-something countries have gone to e-passports, and 11 of the 15 CARICOM states, we are number 12, who have gone out to e-passport. The e-passport is a passport with a chip, and as such, your identity is also now stored on the chip, and that makes it a far more robust document and has a lot more security features. And many countries are going that way because identity theft, the agency also has facial recognition systems, which helps us to go into the background of when the persons apply. We can check to see if they had any previous passports before.
This is what you call now what's it called?
Well, we look for the
biometrics.
Biometric. And we also have our document forensic lab. So if you did try to do something, we can actually test the passport to find out if this is a genuine document. So when you look at the total picture of security that we are now putting in to protect the Jamaican passport and the identity of Jamaican people, it is something that is very important to the agency and we take very seriously.
4 years ago, we started to wonder, what would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. Take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that cupcake, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology. Once you've got everything you want, you can just go. When you leave, our Just Walk Out technology adds up your virtual cart and charges your Amazon account. Your receipt is sent straight to the app, and you can keep going. Amazon Go. No lines, no checkout. No, seriously.
How do we ensure we live the best possible lives that we can? And the way we do that is by living healthy lives.
We all know that the costs of health are just increasing exponentially. We need to look at ways to provide that healthcare in a more efficient way, and digital health is the answer to that.
In pharmacy systems for dispensing, in clinical systems in aged care, hospital electronic records.
It shouldn't be about, I've got to see a doctor at a certain time. It should be about, I've got the right information at the right time to give the right care. And digital health is the enabler for that.
Communication really relies on technology in the 21st century. One of the great benefits of having a centralised set of tools like the My Health Record, all the members of these small communities in Australia can have the ability to connect to their health in a much more empowered sense.
What I found really useful with My Health Record is being able to share my results and my clinical notes with the hospital, so we're not missing anything.
Nobody expects to end up in the emergency department, but My Health Record shines when there's a crisis.
G'day Kendall, how are you getting on?
Hey, good, how are you?
Telehealth is providing the opportunity for specialists to give healthcare to rural and remote Australians. She feels that I'm part of her healthcare team.
The whole concept of electronic prescriptions, getting rid of pieces of paper that can get lost, improving communication between doctors and patients and pharmacists and linking everybody together has been a long time coming.
It is a much more idyllic system than handwritten scripts or notes because everything is electronic. There's always a reference point that you can go to.
Digital technology is now essential. It's at the heart and centre of future medicine.
Once upon a time, the most important tool for a doctor was the stethoscope, but today the smart device is what we need the most.
We will never be able to practice good medicine without digital health.
The reason digital health is so important is that there's so many silos of information, and when you're looking after a patient, you need to have all that information. Without digital health, it's just guesswork.
We're not talking about one business, you're talking about hundreds and thousands of small businesses, all with their own technology, all with their own budgets and all with their own plans.
Digital health can actually be that glue that brings together health system providers in a diverse way, in an integrated way and in a safe way.
ding ding.
Lauren? Hey.
Ding ding ding.
The greatest percent of the population in Wajir County are pastoralists. Normally, this area used to have a lot of camel, sheep, and goats. Pastoralists have lost their livestock. Most of their livestock have died, and they are also forced to move out of this area in search of pasture and water. Women and children have been left behind. Such kind of a drought has not been experienced in the recent years.
The water ATM is a new way to distribute the water. Everyone in Hadado has got one of these tags. When a tag is called the water ATM, the water comes down. It's as simple as that.
Through this system, we are able to identify the vulnerable members of the community. We are intending to initiate an emergency cash transfer that will target the beneficiaries to be able to purchase water. This is completely a new way of doing things.
The Chinese last month unveiled the world's first digital currency from a major power. Currency that would not be printed but would exist only in cyberspace on your phone, for example. Is the Fed working on a digital dollar?
We are actually evaluating that. Most major countries are now looking at the possibility of having a digital currency and really asking the question.
Imagine a government that creates money that has an expiration date, and if you don't use it, it'll disappear. That's happening already with the digital yuan, and Americans are rightfully skeptical.
President Biden issued an executive order to explore the creation of a U.S. central bank digital currency, effectively converting the dollar into a centralized digital currency.
The Federal Reserve just announced that it's about to show us its new digital payment system this year in July. This is having a huge ripple effect across the entire internet because the US dollar is in the process of being replaced by a central bank digital currency, or a CBDC. In fact, most countries around the world are creating their own right now.
What if I told you 90% now of the world's central banks say they're investigating central bank digital coins?
Our currency is crashing and will soon no longer be the world standard, which will be our greatest defeat, frankly, in 200 years. There will be no defeat like that. That will take us away from being even a great power.
Since the fall of Soviet Russia, the United States has been on the top of the international stage. We're the military, economic juggernaut of the world, so much so that the entire international economy runs on the dollar. And we've been doing everything to protect that.
If the abandonment of the dollar takes off, you know, for 80 years now, we have flooded the world with US dollars. They've kept hold of them. That's been fantastic because they give them useful things. You know, they give us toasters and cars and copper mines for those dollars. Now, the problem is if we throw that away, all of those dollars come flooding back into America. That means we have way too many dollars. We have a word for that, which is inflation. So we could see enormous inflation, and that's at a time when our banks are already wobbling. All of those dollars come flooding back into America. That means we have way too many dollars. We have a word for that, which is inflation. So we could see enormous inflation, and that's at a time when our banks are already wobbling.
So what can Joe Biden do about this right now? Because it seems like the entire world is conspiring against us and the dollar.
Yeah, there's two things. One of them we have been trying to get them to do for a long time, which is cut the spending. You know, the inflation right now for the past, year and a half, Americans have been suffering, highest inflation in 50 years because of all the government spending. Forget raising, interest rates, forget all these shenanigans with the banks, cut the spending. Number two is we need to learn to mind our own business. Other countries have their way of doing things. If we go in there and we start dictating social policy, they start to get scared. And, what happened after Russia went into Ukraine is we seized the assets of the Russian central bank. Those were the dollars that they were holding. We did not even do that during the Soviet Union. We had, proxy wars going on all over the world, and we didn't even do that. This administration is just absolutely reckless. That sends a message to every country in the world that if you get on the wrong side of our LGBT policies, who knows, you guys might be next.
So we're printing and spending too much, and we're starting wars all over the place. And that's basically the chickens are going to come home to roost?
That is the fear. And, there are trillions upon trillions of dollars that foreigners are holding on to. If you're a rich Mexican, you don't trust your currency. I understand why. You're not keeping your life savings in Mexican pesos, right? You're just keeping enough for a couple months. No, your life savings are in dollars today. But if that goes under threat, if countries start getting rid of dollars, Japanese banks start selling off the dollars because we're losing value, that could turn into a flood. All of that money, they sell it. Where does it go? It's got nowhere else to go. It comes back to America. What does that mean? It means your dollar would massively erode. We're talking much more than even what happened in the 1970s, certainly a lot more than what happened over the past year.
We are watching the collapse of an empire happening in real time. This week, we saw one of the biggest stories in the world happen about 30 miles from where I am right now in Saudi Arabia. Here in the Middle East, everyone is talking about it. But the story got almost zero attention because Donald Trump was arrested and the news media decided to send every camera they own to cover that story, even using helicopters, following Trump's car like it was a O.J. Simpson and a white Bronco story. Meanwhile, you'll be able to tell your kids where you were when the United States of America did exactly what the Roman Empire did and utterly collapsed. Because all of the signs were there, staring us right in the freaking face, but the news media were on lunch break or out smoking a cigarette. This week, we got our clearest sign yet that America is in serious economic trouble. And I'm going to show you what happened in Saudi Arabia and China that is sending shockwaves through Washington and the Middle East right now. The Biden administration is, of course, hiding it from you. They don't want to talk about it. But I'll show you this in a minute. But first, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that the United States is mirroring almost exactly what led to the fall of the Roman Empire. Just dive into the research. Because during the late Roman Empire, the government found itself in almost the exact same situation as the United States today. The Romans facing massive military spending to satiate their continued expansion. They went into massive debt. They started borrowing all kinds of money in order to pay for this military expansion. It all created a downward debt spiral that consumed the Roman Empire, and they couldn't get out of it. Today, the U.S. government is also facing skyrocketing levels of debt, with the national debt currently sitting at $33 trillion. This level of indebtedness is unsustainable. How are they going to get out of this? The United States now has over 750 military bases around the world. It's one of the most infuriating things in the world to me. It's spending billions to overthrow other governments around the world. Here was Senator John McCain in Ukraine in 2013 admitting they're in the process of regime change.
Senator, you have just addressed the crowd of protesters there yourself in Kiev. What is it you're trying to do here?
Hopefully what we're trying to do is bring about a peaceful transition here.
Oh, they got their proxy government all right. So the U.S. has massive military expansion by installing our own proxy governments and military bases around the world. But don't call it an empire. But it's the same thing as the Romans, just with a different name. Another factor that contributed to the decline of the Roman Empire was the debasement of the currency. Just like the United States, in an effort to finance its military operations and other expenses, the Roman Empire began to issue coins with less silver inside of it. That led to hyperinflation. It led to a loss of faith in the currency. Does that sound familiar to you? Where have I heard this before? Only this time, the difference is that the United States dollar isn't tied to any gold or any silver. It's tied to nothing. The US dollar is backed up by debt and US military power. And most importantly, using the US dollar to pay for oil transactions. So this week, Saudi Arabia surprised Joe Biden and the rest of the West by suddenly announcing a massive oil production cut, which will reduce OPEC Plus's production by another 1.5 million barrels per day until the end of the year. Oil prices then shot up above $80 a barrel, up 6%. But it's not just about the oil production. It's about what happened next. The Biden administration threatened Saudi Arabia with severe consequences. Like what? Pulling our military protection? Like what else are we going to threaten them with? His response? Actually a jaw dropper. The Crown Prince said he's done pleasing the United States, and he doesn't care what President Biden thinks of him. Done pleasing the United States. The only reason that I can think of that you say something like this publicly in an interview in a newspaper is because you're already dating somebody else. And the Saudis are now fully engaged with China and Russia. This game is over for the United States. Now, for a few years now, Saudi Arabia has been moving away from the United States. Then candidate Biden said they need to be treated like they're a pariah, like the pariah they are. Remember this?
And I would make it very clear, we were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are.
But then suddenly we needed cheap oil, and Biden flew over to the kingdom to kiss the ring of the Crown Prince. It was embarrassing. And then this moment happened. Reporters at that meeting yelled out, "Hey, Mr. President, is Saudi Arabia still a pariah?" Just watch the Crown Prince laugh about it during that question.
President Biden, is Saudi Arabia still a pariah? President Biden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we've relied on them for their oil reserves, and they relied on us for our military protection. It's been a mutually beneficial relationship, but that's all changing now. They're starting to look beyond the United States for allies and are forging closer ties with countries like China and Russia. So what does this mean for the United States? Well, for starters, it means we're going to lose a boatload of money. Saudi Arabia is one of the world's largest oil producers, and we've been buying their oil for years. They start selling to China and Russia instead, and now we're going to have to pay more for our oil. Just sitting here in this port, watching the Saudi Arabian oil barges leave port and go out. It's an amazing sight to behold. So that's going to hit the American consumers very, very hard, as everything from gas prices to heating bills will go up. But it's not just oil prices that will be affected. Saudi Arabia is also a major investor in the United States. They own a lot of our debt, and they invest heavily in American companies. If they start pulling their money out of the United States, it's going to hurt our economy. It's already happening. Just look at the inflation numbers. Saudi Arabia is not only distancing itself from the United States, but also selling off its holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds, which is a devastating blow to the U.S. economy. It's worth noting that Saudi Arabia has been the largest foreign holder of U.S. Treasury bonds for many years. So this is a significant shift in the global economy. Now, some might say, so what's the big deal? It's just one country selling off some bonds. What's the big deal here, Clayton? Well, let me explain. Because U.S. Treasury bonds are a critical source of funding for the United States government, and they are used to finance everything from Social Security, Medicare, military, infrastructure, everything. And when a country like Saudi Arabia sells off large amounts of these bonds, it puts downward pressure on the prices, which means that the United States government now has to pay higher interest rates to attract new buyers. This can increase the cost of borrowing for the U.S. government, which can in turn lead to higher taxes, inflation, even a massive recession, which we are facing right now.
Wandering from the fold of God, He to rescue me from danger, interposed His precious blood. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for Thy courts above.